Good morning, everybody. This is my colleague Andrea. I'll pass it to her in just a second. We'll talk over her. But we work for a research firm called Responsive Management, and our specialty is public attitudes toward the environment and natural resources, wildlife, and that kind of thing. So we do a lot of work for conservation organizations, state agencies, that sort of thing. And it's pretty much all surveys and focus group panels, just like the one you're about to see. So Keep America Beautiful brought us in to help facilitate this discussion today. And we kind of have an interesting panel. We actually have a combination of general population, everyday consumers. We have a mix of recyclers, kind of semi-committed recyclers, and then we actually have some non-recyclers too. But we promised them that nobody's going to jeer or give them a hard time or anything like that. This is for research purposes. But we thought it would be a very interesting discussion. We also have people from the recycling industry, and I guess they're seated mostly on this side of the table. And then we also have a couple people from some interesting brands that are going to take part in the discussion as well. Generally, the way we have this structured is most of our, well, at least the first part of the focus group, we have mostly questions for the consumers. And then we'll get into questions for the recycling industry and then the brands. But of course, and this is kind of to everybody, we do want to see some, or rather we'd love to see some interaction. The best focus groups are not, just us posing a question and getting back a bunch of individual answers. They're interaction, and they're spontaneous discussion, and some agreement, some disagreement, that kind of thing. But again, it's all for research purposes, and we're really excited to be here. We think you guys are going to find it interesting. So, turn it to Andrea.
All right, thank you. And I think Tom pretty much covered a lot of it, but as we said, we have consumers here and some industry and brand representatives. So this is a bit of a unique experience, I think, for everyone here. It's going to be really interesting. Just a few things. We are feeding this on Facebook Live. It's streaming right now. So we have that going on, and we may have some questions that are posed by watchers on Facebook Live, and those will be fed to us, and we can ask some of those questions. But in the audience, I believe you'll see you have some note cards and some pens, and feel free, if questions pop into your mind, to write them down and just kind of hold them up. Someone will come grab them, and as appropriate, they'll bring them up to us. So with that, I think that's pretty much everything. We're just gonna get going.
And we're going to be facing these guys. So most of our attention is going to be directed to them. But obviously this is for your viewing and informational pleasure as well. So yeah, but you'll have to look at the back of our heads for most of this. But
just ignore our heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen to the people talking.
Right.
Okay, with that, I think we'll get started.
Great. And thanks again, everybody, for being here. We're really excited. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay. For everyone in the panel, you have microphones in front of you. Right now, they probably have a red light on. There is a big button on the front of your microphone that when you push it, that light will turn green, and that means it's on. So if you have a red light, it's muted at the moment. When it's green, it's on. And so if everyone would actually go ahead and turn their microphone on, because we're going to start with some brief introductions. We're going to go around the table. Okay, let's start on this end. If everyone if our industry representatives and our brand representatives, when you introduce yourself, you can let us know your name and your company, and maybe just very briefly.
So we want to go to Plan B and just do.
It
takes the spontaneity away a little bit, but that's okay. That's some of you guys will be. A lot of mics are be so essential. But yeah, I guess go ahead and press your thing so that you see the red light, and then once we want to start commenting or you have a comment, you go to the green light.
Okay, as I said, if you could just let us know your name and your company and just a brief description of how you're involved in recycling. And then for our consumers, if you could just let us know your name and tell us how often you recycle. That'd be great. But we'll start on this side of the room, please, with Bob.
Sure. My name is Bob Cappadonna from Casella Waste Systems. We are primarily in the Northeast as a vertically integrated waste company. publicly traded. Started in 1975, two brothers, and today both very active. My role with Casella is oversight of the recycling arm of Casella. With the 12 recycling operations, 7 are single stream process and marketing of over 850,000 tons of recyclables per year.
Good evening. This is Bruce Bates Trash Removal. I'm the president. We do a large recycling in the Washington metropolitan area, over 250,000 homes, curbside recycling. We have a C&D facility, recycling MRF. We're the largest food waste hauler in the area, so we provide a lot of recycling services.
My name is Joaquin Mario. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Balcones Resources. We are an environmental services company based out of Austin, Texas. We provide regional recycling processing services in the Austin, Dallas, and Little Rock areas, processing about 20,000 tons of material per month.
I'm Will Sager with the Southeast Recycling Development Council. Our mission is to unite government and industry to promote sustainable recycling. We focus a lot of our efforts on the economic impact that recycling has in the Southeast, and we communicate that to elected decision makers. We also do a lot of work on best management practices that we communicate back to local government operations. Our goal is to improve the quantity and quality of the material in the supply chain for manufacturing.
Good morning. I'm Kanika Greenlee with the City of Atlanta. I serve as the Executive Director for Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission, as well as serving as the Environmental Programs Director for the City of Atlanta's Department of Public Works, where I oversee the curbside recycling program.
Good morning, Jim Norton with Owens, Illinois, or better known as OI, the largest glass container manufacturer in the world. How we're involved in recycling is we consume a lot of recycled glass that's collected at the curb on an annual basis. Globally, we purchase over 5 million tons a year, and would like to purchase more.
Good morning, Stephanie Baker with KW Plastics. We are the world's largest plastics recycler. We're headquartered in Troy, Alabama. But we purchase and bring in material from throughout continental North America, reaching beyond to be able to get plastics, specifically high-density polyethylene and polypropylene, for recycling. So in the supply chain, we are a reclaimer, a reprocessor. Our end product is a post-consumer resin that has been sold into manufacturers.
My name is Dylan Thomas with the Recycling Partnership. We are a national nonprofit funded by big brands like Coca-Cola and Keurig Dr. Pepper, and big retailers like Target and Amazon and all the folks that make the stuff that go on the shelves that are sold to those retailers. And we're dedicated to transforming recycling for good, bringing recycling to those who don't have it, to give them the convenient access to recycling, and then improving it for those that do.
Hi, I'm Andy Hill. I'm a consumer, and I recycle whenever I can. Yeah, I'm an avid recycler, so everything in my apartment complex will let me recycle. I do.
Okay, my name is Karen, and I'm a professional organizer, and I recycle only when a client requests that I do. I am not a recycler at all. So, but I have an open mind, so I'm willing to listen to arguments, but so far, I'm not a recycler.
Hi, I'm Tania. I'm a consumer, and I recycle about 1 to 2 items a month when it's convenient.
Hi, my name is Leor. I'm a consumer. I cannot say I recycle too often.
Good morning, my name is Dean, and I am also a non-recycler.
Good morning, my name is Sharon, and I'm also a sometime recycler.
Hello, I'm Darcy. I feel kind of at odds because I recycle daily. I live in an apartment building, and the community I live in encourages strongly recycling. So it's very easy to recycle.
Good morning, Nicole Smith with Coca-Cola North America. I lead our customer collaborations on sustainability initiatives, everything ranging from water to recycling. And of course, we've recently announced our World Without Waste goal to help collect and recycle every bottle and can. So very excited to talk to all of you today and get all those bottles and cans in the bin.
And good morning. I'm Neha Tate. I'm a brand manager at Keurig Dr. Pepper, and I work on portfolio initiatives. And one of our priority portfolio initiatives is to convert all of our K-Cup pods to 100% recyclable material by the end of 2020. And so I work on the brand strategy for that.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We're going to get started then with the conversation. We're actually going to start with consumers, and so our first set of questions are going to be directed at consumers, and then once we move through that, we'll wrap that section up with our representatives having an opportunity to follow up or comment or ask questions of the consumers. So I want to start with my consumers, and you already told us about how often you recycle. Those of you that do recycle, talk to us a little bit about where and when you recycle. Is it at home, at work? Is there one place you do it more than another? Why?
When I recycle at mom's or like a convenience store or a restaurant that has different receptacles that it's easy to identify what goes where.
Yeah, similarly, I recycle at home and at work. It's I live in an apartment complex, so they have things separated out, so it's easy to know what goes where. And then at work, it's similar to that, bottles and cans and paper and things like that. So both places.
Okay. Darcy, what about you?
I recycle daily. When you're retired, you find you have time for certain things. But it's easy to gather up the materials, and this includes cardboard boxes if I get them from packages, or plastics, bottles, anything that can be recycled. It's very convenient. The apartment building I live in, they have a room at the end, 2 rooms, one at each end of the hallway, most levels. Just take them down there and deposit them in the bins. They're collected daily. Where they go after that, I have no idea. I only hope for the best. But also the community that I live in strongly encourages recycling. In maybe 6 months or so, the community, the apartment building where I live at, they removed the outside trash bins. So now what they have inside as we come in the entrances are different boxes to put things. So since I'm in a habit, if I have anything to recycle, I just dump it. Usually it's a mixed items that I can deposit, and I just put them in there, and they're also conveniently located by a mailbox. So if I get anything I don't want, I can take it, like magazines, and that's a lot of stuff. Rip off my name and dump it in there, and unless I have to take upstairs and shred. So that's basically the convenience, and also because of the community. And I was involved with recycling years ago, back when I was younger, and my parents used to think I was nuts. So anyway, that's back when in the 70s when President Carter was on the way. So I've had an interest in recycling, but I've talked too long, and we can all talk too long.
Okay, Sharon, how about you? You said you recycle some.
Well, I recycle because on my job, Montgomery County requires that we recycle at work. So one day the recycling police showed up, and apparently we didn't have enough blue bins in our offices. So now I have a blue bin in my office that I can recycle in my office, in the kitchen, in the hallway, everywhere. And I also recycle at my apartment complex. I like the single stream recycling because you can throw it all in a bag and just let somebody else do the work for you. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Do any of our other consumers have any comments about when they do recycle? Karen, it sounds like you said for your job, sometimes clients request it.
Yeah, the only time I recycle is basically for my job, because I work in different counties. So there are different rules and restrictions for different counties. What I don't understand is why and how that makes any sense in the long-term goal. So I'm thinking, what in the world are we doing? And I work for someone who is a militant recycler. So I will throw things in the trash and she's behind me pulling it out. And I'm just like, okay, somebody needs to convince me that what this is happening is actually the goal that we're out there to, go through all this effort for. So, okay.
Yeah, I try to recycle at home, but I only have like that big blue bin, and I really have no idea what goes in there and what doesn't, besides like cans and like plastic bottles. But cardboard boxes, I need to recycle that. So I end up just throwing most of it in a combined sack and it gets hauled off. I'm not sure if it goes to recycling or trash.
Right.
So the not knowing kind of prevents you from doing it more?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really think about it.
So tell us, okay, so it sounds like you said, plastic bottles go in there, cans go in there. I mean, what types of things, are you recycling bottles and cans then, since you know they go in there, you just don't know what else goes in there, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'll like, if I think about it when I have a bottle, I can throw it in there, I'll throw that in there. But trying to think of an example, maybe like a Tupperware or something, I don't know if that's recyclable, or.
I have a question for him. Would you reach in the trash can and take a bottle out and put, okay.
Okay. So what types of things are you recycling when you do recycle?
Plastic bottles, glass bottles, metal, aluminum cans, cardboard. If I get some kind of newspaper, I don't subscribe to the newspaper, but if I get newspapers like junk mail, I'll recycle that. Just paper in general, plastic to-go containers from restaurants. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a little like cardboard, like juice boxes or anything like that. That's about it.
So I recycle for my own personal use. Like if I go to the store and buy a salad or something and it comes in a nice container, I'll keep that container. Or if I go buy water or something, I'll keep that nice water bottle and put my own water in there, which makes it look like I just have an expensive bottle of water. So I try to, recycle a lot of the paper and the plastic that I do get, because for me, my daughter's like, Mom, why do we have all these bowls from the Chinese store? I'm like, but they make nice salad bowls. I can put my lunch in there. It's really exciting.
Dean, what about you? Do you recycle anything?
Not really. Not really. Every once in a blue moon, say if I'm cleaning up around the house and I got like a stack of magazines that I've accumulated over, a number of months or even like an entire year, where I'm just literally having a massive bag of something, and then I'll just, I'll throw that all together. But other than that, not so much. I tried it in the past before, but it's kind of an inconvenience for me, in the sense of I live in a studio apartment. There's not a lot of space, so I'm not going to have a bunch of different bins in my house or anything like that. And then on top of that, even when like I've gone to the recycling bins on my floor, there's basically two little bins that are for maybe 50 units just on my floor, and they're always completely full. And it's like, well, I don't want trash just sitting out in the garbage room, so I end up just kind of tossing it. So because it's not the most convenient thing for me, I just really don't think about it.
Okay. So let's talk about why you do or don't recycle. I'm hearing a lot of mentioning of convenience and ease. So talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, how much does that play into your decision to recycle or not recycle?
100%.
Is there anything else? So convenience.
I know Sharon mentioned the single stream. I never heard of that before. I've seen that before. If that was a thing that was in my area or my community, then I would use it.
Yeah, I think from what I was saying and what she's talking about with someone else going and separating it, that would make a big difference to me, because as I said, I'm not really sure what is recyclable and what isn't, so it usually all just ends up in one trash bag. But if there was something where someone else was going in, I mean, I think that would solve
a lot. I don't know how that would be implemented, but I feel like that's my main concern. It's just knowledge.
If it were clear where this stuff was ending up, then I would do it. I mean, if there was a real benefit at the end of this, and I knew this was worth the effort, but it is so time consuming. And then to think that this stuff just gets chucked in the landfill anyway is really irritating. So I feel strongly about that.
I'm kind of the opposite mind. I mean, I think it takes like 3 seconds to separate something into one bag and trash in another. So for me, this is the first I've heard of the single stream recycling. To me, it doesn't take much effort to just separate it while I'm using it. And then when I'm done, I have one bag for plastic bottles and glass bottles. I have another area for cardboard, and then I have another area for just like waste.
I'm sorry, what's your name? Andy? Okay. He said that the effort is in the separating. I think it's in the, oh, well, maybe the label isn't recyclable or the top isn't recyclable. And maybe you have to rinse it out, or maybe you got some food waste on it. So it's like, if I put this in there, you may not accept it anyway. So I think that whole process, and which may not even be a process or relevant anymore today, but I feel like that's the part that deters me from it. Not the actual, okay, bottles go here, cans go here, or what actually is, but the actual preparing it to be recycled.
Okay. Yes, Darcy?
I think for me, it was a habit when I started several years ago living in the apartment building I live in, and then being involved in some civic affairs within the county where I live has also brought me in to meet other people who are, well, they're extreme, more so than I would be on certain environmental factors or recycling, but it's a way to educate myself, and it just becomes a habit. It's no different than, you make your bed every morning. This is just part of what your routine is, and for me, it doesn't take that much time, and it's convenient, and I know there's benefits to our society for doing it.
So I'm the type of person that I can be influenced by my peers. So if any of my friends ever recycle, then I would keep a box and I would give it to them. I know they recycle, so I'll keep this and I'll give it to them. Just like Walmart receipts. My friend has like an app where if you go to Walmart and then something pops up on somebody else's flyer that's cheaper, then you get the money back. So I give her all of my Walmart receipts. But I only had one friend that ever recycled, and like when life starts to happen, it's kind of like the first chore that you kind of kick to the side and like, oh, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. It takes too much time to think about it or whatever the case is. But if just one person in my friend group would do it, then I would be more inclined to do it.
Okay. Dean?
I don't know if it necessarily influences my decision to recycle or not, but I do know at my job, I've seen like a recycling bin before, and I can't remember, someone up here mentioned not knowing exactly what goes in the bins as far as like, well, what if you eat something and it has food on it or something of that nature. I've seen literally everything go into this bin, Kleenexes, food, like your meal container that you just finished eating, and it's kind of a thought process where I thought, well, that's a garbage can. Is everything recyclable at that point? Like I said, I don't necessarily know if it has influenced my decision not to contribute to it, but I just think to myself, well, all of that can't be right.
Okay. So I've heard a lot about convenience and inconvenience as reasons to recycle and not recycle, some lack of knowledge and awareness, maybe also contributing to not recycling. Let's talk about motivations, maybe on a larger scale. Would you say, concern about the environment, concern about sustainability, does that influence your decision to recycle or not to recycle? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I'm Sharon, the consumer. It influences me a lot because excuse me, the environment that we live in is changing. We are recycling because it's a way to put jobs back into the community. It's a way to educate our consumers on how important it is to recycle. And it's also how the different municipalities are involved in recycling, because there are lots of signage. I mean, there's signages on everything. I mean, they make it so easy for you to recycle that, you know, you can just read the little blue can and it tells you what to recycle. Or you, in my community, they write it in big letters on the trash cans. Don't put this here. Or it's on the door before you get into the trash area, what not to put in the recycling area. So, I mean, as a consumer, you have to educate yourself on what it is that you need to do to help the environment around, because what we do for ourselves now will help the next generation to come.
Okay.
Where I live in Northern Virginia, the community or county government emphasizes strongly environmental, and so it's constant. I mean, it's just constant, and it gets to be sometimes too much. But on the other hand, they do sponsor countywide for recycling computers. Mm-hmm. They're trying to educate people of all ages, and when these events do occur, whether it's in where I live or somewhere in the metro area, there are local media representatives. They're usually talking about it. Sure, it's a brief blurb, but it does educate and it does inform. And the encouragement and the purpose of knowing your tax dollars are going to something is a way to have a buy-in to participate. And the only thing that I would not want to put in e-waste, I haven't taken anything over there like old computers or printers yet, because usually I can, or screens, I can usually find somebody who can need those. But I want the hard drive first, so I'll keep the hard drive and then destroy that later, but the rest of it needs to be recycled responsibly. And going along with some of the other, I'm not always sure what is available or can be recycled. But, you know, sometimes if you're not sure, you're just going to end up I'll put it in the garbage before I put it in the recycling bin.
Okay.
Yeah, the environmental component is the main reason I recycle. You know, whether or not that recycling ends up in the same landfill as the rest of the waste that I throw away, I don't know, but I'd rather take the chance of it not. Same reason I cut up those little plastic 6-pack holders, you know, like, I don't know if it's going to end up in the ocean, but if it does, it's probably safer that it's cut up. So the environmental component is definitely the main reason.
And I love the environment as much as anybody, but I would still like to know what the purpose of all this is. I mean, it's like we're sheep. We're just following along and doing what, you know, but what's happening? It's just, I really want to know what's happening. And I never get a clear answer on that, especially now that China's not taking a lot of our recyclables anymore. So they're going to get chucked into landfill, right? So we're still going through the same process. So it's very frustrating.
So, no, I'm not motivated by the environmental component, but I do know that everyone over there is getting paid from what consumers recycle, but the consumer, all they get is a good feeling inside. Like, you guys are making money and we're sitting here, you know, going through all this effort or effortless work and just filling y'all pockets. I'm just saying.
All right. You know, just to continue along that line of thinking, to get a little more specific on motivations, you know, discussion about the increasing volume of debris in our oceans, you know, climate change, how are those affecting your decision to recycle, to not recycle?
I understand that's a big concern, climate change and the environment and everything. However, just because I guess it's not as immediately showing when I recycle what the difference is, and there's only so much time, effort, and money that you have to put into different causes and charities and things, it doesn't motivate me as much as, you know, all the other causes that are out there.
Yeah, just going back to what I said earlier, it definitely motivates me. I mean,
I try to do whatever is possible. I don't own an electric car or anything, but you know, that's something I aspire to have, and to try to do everything I can to help with climate change.
I think there's a lot of hubris in that, thinking that the United States is really going to make a huge change by doing our part in recycling and the rest of the world isn't. So, you know, I love the environment, but I just don't see the point. I just don't get it.
I guess it would help if somebody could tell us if you're all recycling, especially brand folks here, and how you use your recycled products. You know, maybe to educate your consumers as part of your advertising blitz, so that there is some convincing. But please don't give us dumb ads like we're stupid. We're not stupid. As consumers, we know what's going on. So some upfront information. Please don't print it.
Dean, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I'm aware of the effects of the environment, as far as, like you mentioned, global warming, things of that nature, and how climate change is constantly affecting us. Or, you know, you see in the media about pollution in the ocean. I guess one of the things is what I kind of think about is it was more in your face as a kid, and when you're in these school programs, and you know, you're very easily influenced, and you want to make change in the world, and so you do your part. I think as an adult, it sounds selfish, but I'm more worried about, you know, myself, and because I don't see immediate effects, similar to what he was saying, that it's just not something that comes to my mind where, you know, just do my part into helping the environment.
Okay. What about social pressure? I believe it was Sharon mentioned you had the recycling police come. So talk to me a little bit more about social pressure and how that plays a role in whether or not you recycle.
Well, I guess on my job is part of what we do, because Montgomery County is one of those counties where you have to recycle. It's part of the law. Like the police, the recycling police comes to your job and checks all your little blue recycling bins. But as far as social, I'm not a social person, but I do encourage my family to recycle, because it's part of what we need to do to help one another. But I also agree as far as the part about the environmental. There's so many other toxins that are in the air, and you know, you coming off of airplanes, coming from cars, and I think a lot of emphasis needs to be put on the amount of bad air that we get from all the other issues that we have besides recycling. Recycling is a great thing to do, but what about the cars and the planes and all the other emissions that go on in our daily life?
I personally don't receive much social influence from my family or friends. I can only really think of one person that, like, I'm for the most part close to. That's I guess what you would say an environmentalist at heart, at the very least. I remember, and it's not about recycling, but I had made a comment to her about how it was one of these hot summer days we had here, and I had left the air conditioning running, and she kind of shamed me for not being home. And the thing she said is, you know, please help the environment. But outside of that, you know, my social circle really isn't putting any pressure on me to do anything of that nature.
Okay.
I don't feel any social pressure to recycle or deal with the environment, or if it's there, I just don't care, you know, because I have other things to focus on.
I know people are pretty horrified when they see not recycle. I do get that look of, you know, and then when I tell them a little bit about how I feel, then they kind of think a little bit, and then they're like, oh, but then they go back to their thing. But at least it's a thought that I plant to seed. But yeah, I'm a fearless non-recycler.
I have a question for Darcy. You said you don't receive any social pressure, but you've kind of stated that you are on the more, I guess the word is liberal in as far as saving the environment and doing your part to save the world. Do you put that pressure on your friends and family?
Not directly, no, because we're all adults and we all have responsibilities. And I would say my age group, I've been influenced by some of the folks that do recycle and that are very, they're almost warped environmentalists. I mean, everything must be just so. And if you want to be my friend, or I want to be friends with somebody, I want to be able to have something to get along with you, not fear you. So, and I don't want to have our time spent on just one topic. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, I guess I didn't necessarily mean as far as pressuring anyone, but, you know, similar to my friend that I mentioned who made the comment, you know, please turn your electricity off. You know, not necessarily lecturing someone or always trying to put this on them and say, hey, you got to save the world. Just like, do you have casual conversations about it or anything like that?
Yes, I have casual conversations with some of my apartment neighbors about recycling, and they participate, you know, by putting stuff in the bins at the end of the hall. But it's a voluntary thing. When I was working in the district, we had something similar, not to the, I don't think they were called the recycling police. I think there was a worse name for them. But there were people from the district, you know, district government that came around and inspected and the garbage bins. So that's kind of a sideways influence to do things at home. So there was pressure that way at work because they were fined for something regarding this. And all of a sudden there's more bins and, you know, recycle the paper, the plastics, whatever. And so that's a social influence and sphere. But even since I've been retired a few years now, I still have a conscious attitude toward it. But I don't have a peer pressure. But my neighbors, you know, I'm not going to be the recycling police or, you know, what my neighbors are doing. And being, again, involved with civic affairs locally, I do see more of a consciousness by some folks on environmental things. So I'd say it's have an indirect influence.
What about you, Andy? You're a pretty committed recycler. Social pressure, does that play a role in it, or?
Not really, because I don't really get any. Most everyone that I know recycles. I found it surprising that when I took this bottle out there, I didn't see any blue bins. So if it's somewhere like that where there's no blue bins, then I'll just kind of keep it with me. There's usually some on the streets, just toss it in there. But I don't really get much pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can jump in on the social pressure, I think it's interesting because at my age group, which I'm assuming is probably one of the younger age groups on the panel. For not recycling and or people love to. The only social pressure I ever feel from it is people love to share videos and other things, you know, on Facebook and everything. Everyone's seen the video of like the turtle with the straw and all those things. But if we're out in DC having a good time or anything like that, like I can be out with those same people and like I throw a can away, no one's gonna directly say anything to me. No one would ever be like, wait, you should recycle that. No one's ever gonna stop and be like, don't do that. So I feel like a lot more social pressure is shared indirectly over social media sites, and then once it's in person, like nobody cares about it anymore.
Okay, so have any of you ever had a big turning point in your recycling behavior? Was there, you know, did you used to recycle and you no longer do, and why, or vice versa? You know, you didn't recycle and now you're more committed to it. Has there been a big change in your behavior from that standpoint, and what was the turning point?
Well, my turning point was a single stream recycling. So I no longer had to separate everything. So now I just throw it in that bag and put it in that bin that says single stream recycling, and I'm just so happy about that. It's just one of the most unknown things that, you know, that the consumer needs to know about the single stream recycling, because after all, once you put it in that bin, it gets sorted at the other end anyhow. So that's what I really like about it. So I'm just happy about that.
How about you, Karen? Was there a turning point for you?
I think 2 years ago when I started doing professional organizing, and then when I worked, I was not a big recycler. I just didn't really. But anyway, then it was just reinforced wholeheartedly. As soon as I was going from this town over to this town, it's like, whoa, we have different recycling rules here. So I'm like, well, where does this stuff go? Does anybody care where this, what are we doing this for? And no one seems to follow through with that. It's just, we have to do the cardboard, we have to do the plastic, we have to do, oh no, in this town we don't have to do this. So then I thought, this is ridiculous. I just don't, that was my big turning point. I'm like, show me the end result. And I just don't see where that is. So again, I'm open to hear it. I think that there are some benefits somewhere, but overall, with the, you know, I'd say militant nature of some of the things I come across, it is unbelievable. It truly is a religion for some people, and I'm Catholic. I mean, I can tell you my religion, but that is, well, I mean, yeah. So that.
When my mother died a few years ago, and my siblings and I are in the state in the Midwest where she died, I asked the assisted living staff, do you have recycling here? No. But I do know the small community I grew up with where she lived and died, they do have some small scale. But I think that was a turning point because I saw so much stuff that just went into the dumpster, and we just kept filling the dumpster. Then we were told we couldn't fill the dumpster anymore because they had to come empty it. But then we filled up the dumpster again. And I keep thinking there were so many products in there, that things that were not given to other residents that could have been recycled easily. So that was a definite influence, and it made me wonder, why isn't this small community recycling more?
This is unrelated to the question, okay. But I grew up in Charles City County, Virginia. It's a small town in between Richmond and Williamsburg, but we have a landfill there. We don't have any trash dumpsters coming by or any, dump trucks coming by or recycling trucks coming by. What we do is take out our trash bag to a fire barrel and we burn it. And once it's filled with ashes, we'll take the ash to the landfill and dump it. So that's what I was raised on. And then I went to VCU and they had the different bins. So that was like my first real experience with recycling. So I guess I was already behind the curve. So.
Okay. So how could the recycling program in your area be improved? What changes would you like to see?
I think not only, someone said this earlier, better communication, and again, I agree with the not printed part. So better communication, and where the recycling site is, better signage of what goes where. For me, I know sometimes I'm like, well, should I put this in this bin because I don't know if it should go in there. I've noticed in some places they have, this is what does go in here, this is what doesn't go in here. I think that would be beneficial, just because there's some times where I don't know what should go where.
I live in an apartment complex in Woodbridge, Virginia, and we don't have any recycling there, and the closest recycling receptacle is around the corner at a commuter lot, and that's what my one friend used to use. So if it was more accessible, visible, or available to me, then I think that I may have a change of heart.
I think it would be good to convince more people if there was more of a education, but not beat someone over their heads type approach to inform, and also to answer some of the questions we've heard here from comments about where does the stuff go? Is everything recyclable? What are the responsibilities? And also on the tax dollars. And I don't like the idea of the recycling police at any community or emphasis, because I think that sends a negative connotation. But in some cases, that might be what's necessary to force people to change their behavior. And that's really what we're talking about. It's an attitude change. It's a behavioral change. And I think it would be helpful for corporations as well as the federal government or any government to say, what are you doing to participate in in recycling? Does this help? And I think that might help sway some of the people so they have their answers. Because the questions we're hearing here are very legitimate. We just need to know what are the answers. And I have to say, I don't know what all the answers are. And I think I wanted to add something to where I live. We must have single stream. I just didn't know because I put all the stuff in one bag, take it down to the end of the hall. And I do want you to know that the bins are full after football games most weekends.
So my question to, as a consumer, oftentimes I see something that says 100% recyclable. However, it doesn't identify what it's recyclable from. So often, as a consumer, I would like to know what is 100% recyclable really means. And if it's true in what it says, then we need to educate the consumer on how important it is that if you are recycling plastics, paper, and all that, this is the end product of the results, is that we're rebranding it and rebranding it back to the community that it's actually coming from.
I also think that education of the importance of it could be beneficial. We can do the education, as I mentioned before, to our school-age children, but then as adults we get caught up in our own worlds, and it's not necessarily at the forefront of our mind. So yeah, you don't want to be an after-school special for adults and having it slapped across television ads or anything like that all the time, but maybe something along the lines of more corporate initiatives. It sounds like some people here on the panel have jobs where they really push that, or I think even someone said their office can be fined for something for not doing enough recycling. I don't know, what's the balance or any ideas like that as far as what you would want to see as an adult. But my biggest thing is, like I said, it's not necessarily something that's on my mind or a bit of a concern for me, so I just don't think about it. So having the ability to educate and maybe put it where people do need to understand the importance of it and have that reminder could assist with it.
I'm just wondering if, with the fact that China isn't going to be taking a lot of the recyclables that they did before, and that's going to be impacting us quite a bit, does that change in any way how we're expected to recycle? Why not? Because that stuff's still going to a landfill, right? So, no. So where is it going? I don't know.
I thought I'd let it go on until 20 of. So I can say I can speak for Casella. I can't speak for everyone else around the table here. Every one of our products has been recycled since this has been going on with China, and it's been going on for over a year, right? What's caused this is China has tried to clean up their environment, right? Try to establish their own infrastructure from a recycling standpoint. And if I just throw some simple numbers at you, there was 15 million tons that went to China that has now been diverted to other markets, other export markets like Asia, Korea. Some has come back domestically. But in the Northeast, nothing has been landfilled. It has affected simple supply and demand on the pricing of material, certain materials like paper, some cardboard, which typically does get exported out of the Northeast and some in the West Coast. So everything is status quo as regards from a recycling standpoint, depending on where you are in the country, right? again, I can only speak in the Northeast. Folks in the West and the South, they can kind of give their perspective, but I don't think there's much change there. Does that help? Okay. And just so you know, it would be very helpful. I say this all the time to all our communities that come through. We have 12 recycling facilities. 7 of them are single stream recycling facilities. Service over 500 communities throughout the Northeast, New England, New York. Every community comes through our MRF, our recycling facility. We have an education room at every one of these facilities. And I would recommend backtrack to where your recyclables go if you are recycling, and go visit where that recycling facility is, because it will be amazing to you. Every person, every community member that comes to our MRFs is amazed. Vision, pictures are worth 1,000 words. And if you walk through a MRF and you see the process, especially a single stream MRF, which everyone seems to be, that's the convenience in single stream.
You should explain MRF.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I take things for granted, right? A MRF is a material recovery facility. It's an acronym. You'll probably hear a lot of acronyms over the next 30 minutes here, right? So a MRF is a material recovery facility, and they handle all your recyclables. Okay, so if you get a chance, you should go visit, get to know the manager, or through your community, ask your community to go visit the MRF, and you'll be amazed, and you'll be astonished, and you'll be convinced that that material is not ending up in a landfill or an incinerator. You're welcome.
I can weigh in a little bit on that too, particularly to our fearless non-recycler. For China, I think the big misconception around plastics particularly was China historically was taking low quality types of plastics. And so when they stopped doing that, but they weren't taking all of our plastics. But for our company, we took, which would have maybe been considered a contaminant, meaning something that didn't have a lot of quality in the stream. So for instance, a yogurt cup. I don't know if your communities, if you've been advised, you can recycle polypropylene or number 5s, but just take, for instance, yogurt cups. If you had yogurt this morning, we were able to take that, what was usually considered a contaminant, to a commodity, had value. If that yogurt cup has a system for it to come to our facility in Troy and be recycled, creating jobs all along the way to be able to do that. You may have encountered those yogurt cups that we're recycling, particularly in your business and storage totes, shelving. Likely, if you picked up a razor this morning, a toothbrush, the car that you drove here or commuted here, if you do any painting in your work, an all plastic paint can is actually a sister company of ours. That's all made from recycled polypropylene, and it has a high quality. So hopefully that answers some of your questions about where it's going. Does it have value? Is it real? I can't tell you that it's not all going to a landfill, but we're doing what we can to we need it to come to our facility.
Thank you. We'll circle back around to interact with the panelists a little bit more in a moment. I did want to ask the consumers one more thing about, I've heard a lot about more information would be nice. We would like more information from the recycling industry that would help motivate your recycling. Is there anything else that the recycling industry could do to make you more likely to recycle?
I have an issue, and I'd like to know what's being done for medical waste recycling. Can it be? And if it's not, why not? We're smart people, we're a smart society. There's no reason why there isn't something being done. And I know there is cost prohibitive, cost can be prohibitive, but what's the long-term cost recovery?
Okay.
And that's what I think is important on the next horizon or next level of recycling.
Okay. Ania?
I think he said something about it, but we don't see the immediate effects of recycling. And I think that if there was a tangible value associated with the consumer's efforts in recycling, then you would get more motivation in recycling.
Anyone else have any other thoughts on what the recycling industry itself could do to benefit you?
I think it'd be cool to know more about what they're doing for future products. Like I think it was Neha that said you work with Dr. Pepper in making all of these cups like 100% recyclable and everything. I think just knowing about, I think somebody else made a point that if we're just recycling cans and everything and it's just going into pockets or it's not really doing anything in the long run for the big companies, then it doesn't really motivate anything. But if I was to know that they're actually making strides and progress with different things, I think that might motivate a lot of people.
Okay.
I agree as well. There is a lot of media attention on recycling, but the recycling community needs to know, what does recycling do for the consumer? And if the consumer knows that recycling saves lives, it puts jobs back in the community, it does all these really great things for our environment as well, then the consumer needs to know, hey, this is what recycling can do for your community, as well as the overall health and well-being of others as well.
I think, at least for me, I've been talking about like plastic bottles and cardboard and things like that, but some things I don't think about as often are like old clothes, furniture, things like that. I don't really know what to do with them except for take them to Goodwill. So I think it'll be interesting to see some of the companies partnering with organizations like that to be able to make that easier thing, not recycle, but kind of reuse.
And I have one other item. This goes back to when I lived a few summers with my grandmother many years ago. It was about the use of water, and she always made sure I turned off the water after when you wash your hands. So we have a lot of products that are helping to reduce water consumption. But again, what can we do to help conserve water on our own without having some gadget there to do it for us? And also, what is how much water is being consumed to do all this manufacturing, this recycling for products? I think that would be helpful. And what is your environmental standards on that? What are you adhering to them? Are there environmental standards to adhere to? That's the only option, the other thing I want to share.
Just one more thing. And Darcy and Sharon mentioned this. Sharon with reusing the Tupperware and Darcy was conserving the water. When I was growing up, we had that little slogan, reduce, reuse, recycle. And with reducing and reusing, like we see immediate results from that. Like I don't have to go out and buy more Tupperware, or I don't have a high water bill or a high electricity bill because I'm turning off my AC or whatever the case is. You see the value from that directly.
Okay, now I want to open it up to our industry and brand representatives. If you have some comments that you'd like to kind of respond back to consumers on some things you've heard, or maybe just follow up on some ideas, ask them more about it, we'll let you go ahead and do that now.
I have so many questions. I wanted to, one of the questions I had that I wanted to jump in on is those who do recycle, or actually any of you, have you ever looked up whether or not something was recyclable? Just, whether you looked on, on the website, or, or you looked on the recycling container itself. Have you ever kind of tried to seek that out?
I know, aren't there different numbers on the bottles and stuff? Like number 4, you can't recycle, and number 1, you can, or all these different numbers. That would be the only reason I would look something up, not to actually to determine what goes where.
Well, generally, it's on the product that you buy. It'll say it's 100% recyclable, or it's not recyclable, or just like the microwave, don't put this in the microwave. So a lot of that information is actually on the product that you buy.
I have not, because what I recycle is what my building will allow me to recycle.
You know, so whatever we have bins for and whatever they say can go in this bin, cannot go in this bin, I just base it on that.
I also have not actively gone seeking for anything, but one thing that comes to mind that I have seen before is with packaging, similar to what Sharon was saying. I think the one that pops into my mind the most is when you're buying like computer paper. There's often a big label on that. It doesn't necessarily influence my decision to purchase it, but that's the one time that I can say that I'm really aware that a product that I may be purchasing is recyclable or has been recycled.
And just because I've experienced going from county to county, certain things are recyclable and certain things aren't. So,
Well, to find out whether, I get the why would be to find out whether it is recyclable where you are or not.
I think the question though is, why is there a difference in different locations, right? So across from me are all different recyclers. So they take your material and they sort it, and they have in markets. So let's say they've got PET. They've recycled this bottle. I want to buy that PET to put back in the bottle. If they've got an area where they don't have an end user that wants to buy a particular material, like if you don't have Stephanie down the road to buy your polypropylene or your shampoo bottle back, they might not take that material because they don't have an end market. So it's more about the actual collection systems that we have in place. And while they are very close together, it then garners the question, well, why would this community do it and next door it doesn't? And there is some unification we need to be better about as a broader system. And I think they all agree, and we are trying to make it better, but it is learning from consumers like yourselves to see, you know, what makes the most sense? Is it hearing the numbers? Is it seeing the packages that you could put in? How do we help guide that conversation so that at the end of the day, when you go to put it in the bin, you know, I'm supposed to put this here, and I didn't need to like do 10 things, wave it in the air, and then put it in the bin, right? How do we make it really simple? So I think some of the feedback we received today was helpful, and I'm sure anyone else down on the other end of the table might want to jump in here.
I'll weigh in since you mentioned me. So I'm always down the road. I know Alabama seems really far. We bought a load from England 2 weeks ago because we can't get enough from the States. In our case, what we're seeing is, which this is something I think we probably assume consumers don't care, but we're hearing very differently today. I love this, by the way. This is wonderful to me. Is that a hint? But I think a mistake we've long made is we get asked to speak so much all the time, right? My kids haven't seen me in 2 months because I've been talking about recycling solid for 2 months. But the opportunity to listen is so helpful. But to Nicole's point about the infrastructure, so from community to community, you have different material recovery facilities. Is where the material comes in to be sorted. For every type of item that is being resorted, or not type of item in terms of package, but material, there's technology behind that. And we have some really outdated MRFs, and Bob, you can speak to this, but people like Bob all across the country are having to invest money into their facilities. So if I come along and say, I'm going to take your polypropylene now, here's what I'll pay for it, and I need as much as you can send me, they are limited in space and in money and what they can do. So when China came in, instead of MRFs telling the communities and consumers, maybe because they thought it didn't matter because you guys weren't paying attention, but you are, we're learning today. Instead of saying, hey, we can't take this right now because we need to get some equipment, we need to make some investments, they just said you can't recycle it. And it's not true.
So I have to add to this, and it's the last time I'll talk. So we ship all over the country, export other countries. So the basics, if you talk about just paper, cardboard, plastics, metals, aluminum, glass, all over the country. It's not about local markets. We ship to Alabama. Our PET goes to Dallas, Texas. So the basics are there. Some of the difference that you may see in the acceptable lists, maybe some small items like a cart, or a number 5 or a number 7, right? The basics are there. I should speak for this group because I know for a fact that all the basics are there of the 5 or 6 different components that I just described. They're acceptable throughout the country. It really has nothing to do with local end markets. We will find markets, and we have found markets over the past year during these tough times.
And if I could reinforce maybe Bob's earlier comments around the MRF. Bob, I don't know what it is in the Northeast, but I've heard national averages of contamination in single stream MRFs is 24% or higher.
20 to 30%.
Yeah, 20 to 30%. So contamination is those materials that can't be recycled.
Right.
Right, that can't be recycled, or we believe it's recyclable, or maybe it's mislabeled as being recyclable. And it's a big challenge. You know, as a glass container producer, I've got a supplier setting here, I've got the brands I supply setting down there, and a lot of other help in between. And there are markets, to Nicole's comment, there are markets, and sometimes those markets are regional, and sometimes they're not. And but you know, we go back to what are we recycling, and I think we started out with in the good old days. I am a little bit experienced, but in the good old days, you had paper, plastic, or you had plastic, steel, aluminum, paper, glass. Now we've complicated all of those because I heard a lot of design for recyclability from our consumers. Thank you for that. And we all need to design as product designers, need to design for recyclability to make the job easier, you know, for people. We heard that from Wes Schultz in his opening comments. But you know, without that, we've complicated it. We've complicated it as brands. We've complicated it as consumers and what we want. We've complicated what Bob does, what Joaquin does, and you know they've got a big challenge. But hey, where there's markets, there is value. Stephanie's talked about it. It's valuable to us. We buy 5 million tons a year. We'd like to buy more, but it has to make sense. It has to make sense for the entire system.
You
know, 5 million tons of glass specific.
You know, glass specific.
Can I just ask a question? We have been told that our glass is not recyclable anymore because of the mixing of colors. Because different elements go into making different colors of glass.
Yeah, there are different colors of glass, and you know, if I want to make a clear bottle, I need clear glass, right? There are decolorizers you can put in to an extent, but at some point it doesn't work anymore. For example, in a clear bottle, if I go to 50% recycled content from the curve, it has some green in it, it has some brown in it, it has some blue in it. Because there's color sorting technology. It's expensive. $250 million or $250,000 a pop for one of the machines. So it is expensive, and that's an investment either made in the MRF or at a downstream processor. But at 50% recycled content, your bottle, Coca-Cola likes it because it's Georgia green, right? It's about the color of a Coca-Cola bottle. You just can't take all the color out. Now, you can use what's called a 3-mix, so brown, green, and clear all mixed together and make brown bottles. We do it every day. You're being misinformed.
Okay, can we let Joaquin get his question for comment?
You know, I think James made the comment that we're complicating it, and that is absolutely true. I'm confused right now. And that is difficult for consumers, and I'm going to kind of step out of my industry shoes here for a second, because at heart, I'm just basically a hippie who's actually really hardcore about this, and a true believer, as we call ourselves. And I think that as a consumer, we have a lot of power and influence in this process to make it less complicated, right? You've got folks like us sitting here who you can influence through your municipal government. So my company holds a number of contracts with municipalities where we live. And the municipality is our client, right? We're going to do whatever the client wants us to do. There's a cost associated with that, but ultimately the client is you, and you have that avenue to influence as the client. And then over on the product side, on the people that are actually making the bottles or making the packaging, you have the ability to influence them, and that helps us as well. You know, that's one thing I would even shoot over the bow over there to Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper. You know, to make this process less complicated, how can we think about systems that you know, create fewer variety of plastic, right? If everything could be polypropylene and polyethylene, and if those were the only plastic resins that we use to make plastic products, we'd have really simple recycling streams, right? You wouldn't have all of these numbers that you'd have to deal with. It would be really easy. You would know that everything goes into one place. So, you know, I say all this to kind of give you guys a little bit of influence. I think you have the most amount of influence as buyers of these products, and then as members of your communities to basically tell us what you want to do. From my perspective, in operations in the company that we run, that's what, you know, we're doing this because you're here, right? You're producing waste. We're not in business if you don't. So, you know, there is a natural partnership there.
Well, I guess I work with pretty much all the counties in the area, and I work from the street side, so I deal with a lot of the consumers and the residents, and you see the different counties recycling in a different way. Like Montgomery County is still dual stream, so we're still separating the paper and the glass and the plastic. In Anne Arundel, Howard, and Prince George, we're still doing single stream. So when you got people moving from different counties, it's confusing, like she say, how you recycle. So it's very difficult for the resident to understand. So as me as a hauler, even to get my crews to understand how they need to do it as they change from division to division, it's very difficult. But I think education is the key in putting it out there. We started a recycle program in Halifax, North Carolina, because it wasn't recycling at all. And we tried to get the county to say, hey, really put a recycling program together. So we put out 33,000 recycling cards. They gave us a flyer to give to these people in rural North Carolina on how to recycle. We got car engines, transmissions, everything in the recycling bin. I'm like, what do you expect? You're telling somebody, hey, we give you a bin to recycle. In their mind, everything that I think is metal, aluminum, I'm throwing it in the bin. So we had 6 months of pure contamination. So, but you gotta educate the customers because they don't know.
So I want to jump in as a local government. First of all, thank you, consumers, for being here. This has been helpful. It's been great to hear your feedback as to why you recycle or why you don't recycle. But I did want to dispel a myth that, you know, that the industry is making money off recycling. As a local government, as a city, we're not making money off of recycling. So we pay a fee to whoever is picking up this. Where I live in the city of Atlanta, we actually collect it ourselves, but you may have a private hauler such as a waste management or a public services. But we pay for them to process our recyclable materials. At one point we did get a rebate. Now we're paying $25 a ton. So, and that price can change depending on the contract that your local government or your community where you live has. But it's also not free because there's labor, fuel, and equipment costs that are already calculated. And what the tangible value to you as a consumer is, that is reflected in your taxes and what you pay. And so I just want to make sure that you all understand that's why you see some of the different costs. So whether you pay a recycling fee or a solid waste bill in your community, that is going to be reflected in that as well. So I just wanted to let everyone know that.
But somebody else, but somebody is making money from that. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not the municipality.
There are a lot of people making money on this. I don't know that they're lining their pockets,
exactly.
but there's a lot. I mean, our work, we've identified 360 manufacturing facilities in Southeast with 98,000 people in manufacturing jobs that are dependent upon the material that goes into the and they're making a living. Now, there may be somebody in the C-suite somewhere, somehow, but that's, I don't think that's the issue today. I do want to commend the non-recyclers for having the guts to come in this room. We've spent, some of us, 30 plus years on this education component. And maybe we need to recognize when something's not working, we need to adjust it. Maybe we move to communication, because what I've heard today is why bother? Why do it? And I've also heard how to do it. The why, I think we all can accept that there's an environmental benefit to it. That's pretty standard. There's a tremendous economic opportunity here. In addition to what we've inventoried in the Southeast, ISRI's another group that's represented here, has inventoried over 500,000 jobs depending on recycling in this country. It is a significant part of our economy, and it does depend on the decision at the point of generation of material that is diverted from disposal into collection. And that's the part where you as a consumer and a small business have to make that choice for this to work. I think the how part of that, we have grossly failed, because if contamination's where it is, that means every fourth product going in the bin shouldn't be there. That's not your fault, that's ours. And we've got to retool how we get there. We've got to make it consistent, and we've got to reach you. But unless we've got you convinced why, and particularly to dispel the myth that it's all going to landfill, because it's not. The trucks are backing up to the docks today. China's impact changes has had an impact, particularly on pricing, but the material still moves. China was only 15% of the total market for domestic recycling to start with. And yeah, that has an impact, but the material still moves, those jobs are still out there, and the products are still coming back to our shelves in retail.
Manufacturers, listen, please get very specific to some of these questions. And what I mean by this, for Karen's consistent question of what is it, and what happens. I don't even consider myself well educated on this, and I know that I understand, I think I know, a aluminum can. You put it in recycling, in 6 weeks it's back at Coca-Cola or at Anheuser-Busch, right? But it's also, if it goes to the landfill, it's 200 to 500 years before it biodegrades. Plastic, I don't know if those folks here know this, plastic never biodegrades. It doesn't go away. So if it doesn't get recycled and made into some other kind of plastic, it gets smaller, it photodegrades. It becomes smaller and smaller, but it never goes away. So the decision to say, hey, it's kind of difficult, or I don't want to do this because I don't know what happens to it at the end. These guys are telling you, how many million pounds of glass?
5 million.
5 million pounds of glass become the Dr. Pepper bottles. Tons, 5 million tons of glass every year that you recycle become a Dr. Pepper bottle that you're drinking out of the bin within how long does it take?
30 days.
Within 30 days.
30 days from bin to shelf.
That's what happens to it.
And understood. But the thing is about this disposable bottle.
Yes.
That your companies or whomever that is generating now becomes our problem. See what I'm saying? It's our problem.
You don't purchase it. Don't buy it. Don't buy the plastic if you don't want the plastic.
Easily said. When you go out into the, it's just, but you know what? It's just, do you see my point? What I'm trying to say
No,
here?
I really don't.
Okay, because I
looking at it in a slightly different way. It also seems to me like you're not hearing when they say 5 million tons of glass getting recycled within 30 days. You're like, that doesn't count. 500 or 6 weeks for aluminum to be recycled and it gets reused. Oh, that doesn't count.
Be careful. Okay.
what you
All right. So we have heard that there's apparently maybe a breakdown in communication between the recycling industry and consumers, and there's more information they could clearly know. We do want to actually ask a few direct questions of our industry representatives and then our brand representatives, and we are quickly moving along here and running out of time. So you've actually addressed a lot of what I was going to ask you about what do consumers need to know about recycling. But so let me ask you, what would you like to actually see consumers do differently when it comes to recycling?
If I could start, and maybe it makes it less complicated, I would like to see consumers kind of not sweat the small stuff, right? let's focus in on the really easy things that we know about. And I think it's great we've got someone from glass here. Glass bottle, one glass bottle becomes another glass bottle. It's very easy. We can put our hands around that. Let's focus on the paper. The majority of what we are recycling as consumers in our homes or in our office is some kind of paper, whether it's a notebook or a piece of cardboard. By volume, the majority of it, or by weight, the majority of it is paper. If that doesn't end up getting recycled, that ends up in a landfill, which pollutes our air, right? These are real impacts we have. So as from our perspective, we really try to help focus people's attention back on those big items and away from, we can, sorry to KW, but we can all get in the weeds on plastic forever. And it is important. It's incredibly important that we solve some of the issues around recyclability with plastics and what we know and don't know, what consumers know and don't know. Ultimately, let's really focus in on the big items that you can really get your hands about, you don't have a lot of doubt about. And then our job is to figure out how to make sure that you trust that those big items are being handled responsibly, which they absolutely are.
I wanted to bring in the audience that maybe is on Facebook. After you go do your pledge, the Keep America Beautiful, America Recycles Day pledge, the recyclingpartnership.org/recycle better as a quiz on how to see if you're depending on, you get to see which of our panelists you align with and who you want to align with. But I just also wanted to say too that you have a choice when you have a product that you bought. That when I bought this, why do you buy this bottle? But when you buy this bottle, is that you can throw it in the trash, and it's going to have either a neutral or a negative impact. Or you can recycle it if you're able to, and then you're going to have something that is both going to benefit the environment, but also the economy and jobs, especially as the China market is closed down. Those jobs are here in the U.S., and that's something that has a tangible, real impact. We're talking thousands of jobs, billions of dollars a year in wages paid to the workers who have those jobs. So I didn't want to let that get lost in that.
And I would say as a brand, just reinstating what Joaquin said, these packages, aluminum cans, PET bottles, the corrugate boxes, the reason they're designed the way they are is because they're set up specifically for our recovery system. We want these back into every one of our packages. And so that would be my biggest ask, is recognize that, everyone at this table is focused on getting all of these packages back and making sure they don't go to landfills. They do create jobs. South Carolina has a fantastic program. 2 bottles equal a job for the state. They recognize the economic development opportunity and how it benefits the community and makes a stronger, healthier community. Please recycle. Please recycle these items. And to Darcy, kudos for standing up and saying, when I really don't know what to do with the package, I put it in the trash. That's the best opportunity, because you've heard from the recyclers at the opposite end of the table, 20 to 30% contamination means that this is less valuable, right? They're having to process what is trash versus what's a good commodity that can be ultimately part of our circular economy, so that we don't have to pull more resources out of the ground. And that's the big win, right? We don't have to keep mining for these materials. They're already part of our system, so let's just keep them going.
And I'll say just what's been said already, stick to the basics: paper, plastic, metals, aluminum cans, steel cans, and glass. And that's pretty much it, the basics. And when in doubt, throw it out. We see a lot of wishful recycling going on, and I hear that we've complicated it for you, and we're trying to simplify that. I hear that, I receive that. But again, when in doubt, throw it out. That's my message.
Please just do it, because it does matter. We need the material. And if you're in doubt, throw it out. If it's something you're going to have all the time and you don't know, your local government.org.gov or something has got on their recycling website what's in that program, and it's pretty easy. If it's something you're just using one time and you don't know, do throw it out. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be the end at that point. And if your access is not what you would like, if it's a lot easier to get rid of your waste than it is your recycling, if it's not an access that's next to it, then whoever, whether it's the department, whether it's the municipality, whether it's the park, tell them. that it's not okay.
Ma'am, you had a question?
Yeah, I represent the recycled paper industry. So our guys make your cereal boxes. And almost all of your cereal boxes are in fact 100% recycled content. And my message would be why recycle? Look at the containers, and if Coke is, sorry, Dr. Pepper is not putting their product into a recycled content bottle, they probably are. You just don't know it because it's not on the package. So write to them or email. I'm old. I've been doing this a long time. But tell them, why aren't you doing that? And make the effort when you go into the stationery store, I'm sorry, Dean that said, you see that information on the copy paper we all buy, and we all use a ton of at home. Buy the 30% or the 35% recycled content. Because that, again, gives the message to the industry that that's what people are interested in. Okay.
All right, I'm going to move on to a couple questions for our brand representatives. What can the recycling industry learn from your marketing tactics on how to influence consumer recycling?
I think it's tricky because we don't see a lot of marketing from recyclers, but I would even challenge ourselves as we market. You know, a large part of our mission is to inspire happiness, and I think we need to inspire recycling and what the positive benefits are, because I hear that that's a key misinterpretation of what's happening in this industry. And I was very clear from Wes earlier that we need justification. That was one of the top pieces, is that if we're not justifying why we're asking consumers to put this in a different bin, we're not doing our job easier. And that's an action item for us. We recognize that, and with our new World Without Waste goal, that will be a large part of our campaigns next year.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, Keurig Dr. Pepper is very committed to its goal of making 100% of its K-Cup pods, its coffee pods, recyclable by the end of 2020. And we've gotten started already in Canada, where Canada will be converted to recyclable K-Cup pods by the end of 2018. And we want to make sure that we're doing this the right way. And so we've been partnering with recycling facilities, MRFs, across the US and Canada to ensure a couple of things, to ensure that the cups are not just recyclable, but they're actually getting recycled when they get to that facility. They're actually getting captured and put into the correct stream. And so we tried to understand a couple of different things. We first tried to understand, what does the consumer have to do to the pod after they use it in order to ensure that it's definitely captured. So we learned working with the MRFs that they have to peel the lid off and dump out the coffee grounds before recycling the cup, and that really ensures that it's properly captured and not a contaminant. And so that's important in terms of our education to the consumer, that that's the behavior change that will have to happen. But then we also tried to understand what's the rate at which these cups like actually getting captured? Can they be captured at the MRF? And so we actually did a couple of tests at MRFs across the US and Canada, and RFID tagged the pods to watch how they go through the recycling stream, and found that they can be captured, which was great news. And then, lastly, we tried to understand how many of these pods are actually being recycled the right way. And we did a case study. We audited a MRF in British Columbia in Canada, and found that 70% of the pods are being recycled correctly. That means the lid has been peeled off, the coffee grounds are dumped out, and it's recycled correctly. So we did all of this to ensure that what the MRFs are saying and that what we as Keurig Dr. Pepper are saying is the same message, and it's a consistent message on our packaging, on their websites, and it's all one consistent message. And so that partnership is so essential to the consumer education and the marketing communication.
Great. How should the brands and the recycling industry be reaching consumers to change their recycling behavior?
I think on package is critical. We always put some sort of message, for instance, with Smart Water, enjoy the inside, recycle the outside. The message changes by brand because they all have different personas, so to speak. But I think we also need to do more of the advertisements, not print, online, you know. Yeah, just capture them in the store, make sure that when people are making purchase decisions, they know that they're making the right decision. And I think we can really think more social media. It sounds like that's a key way for us to engage with consumers, and where we see even a lot of the influence happening. So I think that's where we'll be looking as we go into 2019.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of what Nicole said, we found the same thing to be true, that the package is actually the primary source where the consumer learns whether or not to recycle something. So they're probably not going online, or they're actually finding it from the package. So it's so essential to communicate clearly on our packaging what is recyclable, how to recycle it, and that's what we're going to be doing when as we transition.
One question for Nika. The RFID tag was on products that went to consumers?
No, so we did tests. Great question. We did tests. We partnered with several MRFs across the U.S. and Canada and ran tests where we tagged the pod to understand, to actually watch it go through the stream and see where it ends up. So these are just tests. They weren't consumer saleable material.
I want to add something real quick to the labeling question. Is that there is a label called the How to Recycle label, which does give direct consumer feedback on whether something is recyclable, whether something is not recyclable, or whether something has to be done to empty it out or something. And it's standardized, and it's on more and more packaging all the time. We're hoping to see it on more packaging increasingly. So I just wanted to chime in on that.
I was going to offer one thing, I think probably to this side of the table. In your communication, but I think I heard 5 million tons or something like that. That's a very impressive number, but if you would have said 10 million tons or 20 million tons, the number's so big it doesn't mean anything to me as a consumer. If you were to say 100 pounds or 1,000 pounds per person in your state, if you break it down like that, it means something to me. So I would just recommend staying away from the huge numbers across the country and breaking it down to, I don't know, a per person in your state, district, or something like that.
I would, as far as, none of you have ever heard of KW Plastics before, nor should you, but our resin is in your homes every single day. Likely you are encountering us not through something that we necessarily manufactured, but through our customers. And I heard today that you want to know where it's going. You want to know that it has value. And if it's something that's coming back into your home, I think that's important that we tell you that.
Any other comments from our consumers?
It's more of a question than a comment. I'm just curious to know, as a consumer, is it cheaper for the manufacturers to use a recyclable product or a non-recyclable product, as far as how are these costs being passed to the consumer? Because I think for everyday consumer products such as paper, whether or not it's recycled or not, I'm making a decision based upon price, as opposed to a cell phone where, it's something that I might be willing to spend a little bit more money on.
So recyclable is probably not impacting the cost. Utilizing the recycled content though back in can. So sometimes it can be cheaper, especially with glass. If you use more recycled content, it lowers, the actual impact of producing it. So that becomes a positive. Sometimes getting clear PET to put back into our bottles can be more expensive. As we mentioned, the commodities fluctuate regularly. So we are tied with the markets, and it's still one of our commitments to hit 50% recycled content for our bottles. So sometimes that will be painful because it will be more costly. But our hope is that as people recycle more and we really drop that contamination, it won't be so costly, right? It becomes a more economical as we see petroleum prices go up and down. So it's a give and take. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's a parity.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming today and for discussing this with us. I think Tom was gonna.
Yeah, just a few concluding remarks. One, I just want to thank the panel, the audience. dialogue. I would love to hear from everybody in the audience on KB's website of what's your takeaway from the discussion here today, because there's been some great insight for our recyclers, non-recyclers to really say, don't tell us just about how to do it, but why it's making a difference. You know, the trust, you know, that these products are, we're going to take our time, our energy, separate it out from the trash, make sure that it, tell us what you're doing with it. Tell us about the whole system. And, you know, we're hearing that dialogue, and that's insightful to us. So I know there's a lot of great takeaways. Folks have been listening, talking. The communication's been just outstanding. So I don't want it to stop. We have to stop. I know that, you know, our time is up. I'd ask Helen and Monique if they have some concluding remarks that they want to make. If not, again, thank you. This session will be on KB's website, as well as Wes's presentation from earlier. We will have that available on our website. Please do post on our Facebook page your thoughts, share them with us, your takeaways. I want to keep this dialogue going. This is a great dialogue. It's a great way to celebrate America Recycles Day. And I think with this kind of information, we can really start to see recycling rates go back up. We stagnated in 2010. We need to see them go up. We need your participation as recyclers to be engaged. We need to do a better job for you, with you. Everybody is in this together. So again, thank you for your participation today. Thanks for coming.